Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Robyn Locke here with me on the show. Robyn is an energy intuitive who has co-authored 2 books that serve as a bridge between the physical and non-physical worlds, which is why it makes total sense that her co-authors, who she refers to as the elders, provide wisdom through her from the other side. Hello, Robyn. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi there. So great to be here today.
Likewise. I am very much looking forward to this. We started off, I always know when it's going to be a really good soul share when we jump right into conversation, and 10 minutes in, I'm like, we should be recording this. Stop. So we had a bit of that. And so, yeah, there's you definitely have a lot of fascinating insight and wisdom to share. And let's do this. Let's start at the same place I always like to start, and that is giving myself and the listeners just a snapshot of what your, what is your highest calling, your highest passion. And so you're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
To share insights from the elders.
With 9.5 floors left to go, and let's see what insights we can cram in there.
Well, and hopefully what they would say is, who are the elders?
Right.
And that would be my opportunity to say, it's this energy consciousness that I discovered a number of years ago, who share all these incredible insights and things that I had longed to know the answer to, but had never quite aligned in the way to receive them. And so I'm in this space, and I've got a blog post where they share insights. I've got a YouTube channel, and I've got an incredible website, and I'd love for you to learn more about them. Oops, it's my floor. Got to get off.
You just blasted through. Now it turned into the Willy Wonka answer, where the elevator blasts into outer space as you float. So let's give a little background, if you could, on I'd love to hear your backstory and how you ended up in such a fascinating spot in life, if you will, communicating with the elders, and whatever feels relevant to share about your backstory.
So what I guess I'd start with saying is, I've always been a seeker, and I've always known that there was more. I grew up in a Orthodox religious background with parents that went to church every week. And but I used to read everything as I grew older. And in my late 20s, I started just devouring books, and anything that was spiritual in nature that might give me greater insights, I would read the book, check it off, and put it on my shelf. Never really enacting anything that it enlisted, but reading everything. And I came to a crossroads in my life in 2012 where I knew it was time to make a career path change. And I didn't know if it was time for me to engage in something more than the routine position that I held. And so I started really praying, meditating, anything that enlists contemplation. I did all those things. And I would pose the question at night before I went to bed. And as I'd wake up, I kept a journal beside my bedside. And over time, it became a laptop computer because I could type faster than I could write. And
Right.
I would wait for insights to kind of come to me.
Mm.
And it was really cool because the language was beautiful. And I knew that if I didn't write it down quickly, it would evaporate kind of as
Mm.
the mist in the morning. And so that's kind of the way it started. And in 2012, I was given that I needed to start a website. And the website that evolved from that was allisuptoyou.com.
Mm.
And I had been in the hospital for some things. And I'll just say, I ultimately lost my colon and some other what I always thought were, necessary body parts and and organs,
Mm. Wow.
and ended up being in the hospital recovering for 5 months, and and so it was that recovery time, and so by 2012 I had recovered, and what was given to me is I might start a website to share those things that I'd learned during that recovery time. And what was easier for me so that if someone else had to go through the same journey, they didn't have to rediscover it by trial and error. So that's how All Is Up to You kind of started. But what was funny is when I got the insight, I was like, oh my gosh, a website. I don't know anything about websites. How could my purpose be that I'm gonna start a website? I can't start. And I was arguing, and I stopped and chuckled and I said, oh my gosh, here I finally, after years, am being given direction, and I'm arguing with the direction I'm being
Right.
given. And so that's how kind of things began. I ended up evolving into a different job position and held more mainstream jobs until about 2016, 2017. And that's when I kind of transitioned into this. And I was in Boulder County. And I always say that it was the confluence of the mountains and that there was some energetic ability because I was again in the posture where I would every day try to elicit more, try to be in that space where something would click. And I started asking questions and I would get information and I started recording it all. And over time, I finally said, because I thought it was my higher presence, my higher consciousness. And I finally said, who are you? What is this? And they described themselves as pure consciousness and said that I could refer to them as the elders. And I remembered kind of arguing with that too. I'm not really an arguer by nature, but I said, boy, that sounds so formal. Do you want it to be the elders? And they said, well, for now that will serve its purpose and we can address the name later on. But for now, it will give you a means to recognize who you're talking to.
Right.
And so that's kind of how it all began. And so both books came to me in Boulder County. And then I moved to Asheville and tried to put them into an audio format. And none of that really worked. And then I moved to the Atlanta area. And I wanted to be close to the big airports so I could travel and teach because I believe in time that this will be something that, and actually I'm already doing it now, so I shouldn't say I believe in time, that I can instruct and share with others the insights that they've given because I believe it's life changing. It's
Mm.
empowerment to
Right.
know that you're more than just this body, which so many already know that are spiritual seekers, but to know some of the answers that will move you out of the limitation that the mind and ego impose and move you to a pathway of accomplishing your purpose, which is why we all came here.
Right. Right. Well, That's a fascinating journey that you've embarked upon, and let's talk about what they've shared. I mean, I know we could probably do many episodes of all the information and insight and wisdom that you've garnered over the years. Perhaps starting with the two books and just giving us an idea of what was the core teachings. That were shared with you.
So the first book that I was given was The Little Book to Find Your Purpose. And it was a very quick download, I guess, but they gave the insights. I asked for the chapter titles first. So
Uh-huh.
I usually get the chapter titles. And then because this was my first endeavor with doing anything like this, I said, okay, you've given me, I don't know if I should share this, but I said, okay, you've given me the 6 chapter titles. Now I want you to give me the chapter content, but I'm not going to look at the title names, and I'm going to know that you're going to know what those chapter titles are so that the chapters fit with the context of the titles. Because I wanted to make sure it wasn't a mental thing going on.
Right.
And so the wording came rather quickly, and in comparison, especially to the What If book of What Is, the second book. And so I went back and I looked at each chapter and each chapter title, and they were in perfect alignment one with the other. And so it was really cool, and
Cool.
it was an inner confirmation to me
Yeah.
that I was doing something beyond the mind, and that it was something that I could trust.
Yeah.
So with The Little Book to Find Your Purpose, of course, it's The Little Book to Find Your Purpose, and it gets you into more of a whimsical posturing to look at what you devised as being your original purpose. But at some point, if we have time, I'd like to tie back into that, because there is a continuation of something I've been given in the last, actually I was given it longer ago than 2 to 3 months, but it's another story. But I want to continue with your answering your question.
Sure.
So let's
We can go there
maybe
next.
consider revisiting that.
Yeah. Take it
So,
wherever you feel is your highest excitement to share, really, ultimately. So.
well, it's exciting because so what I recently did is culled together a lot of the insights that have been given to me early each morning. And there was about 55 pages of insights that I did not remember having been given. And
Mm-hmm.
then I took out the duplicity and anything that was more personal in nature, and I had 35 pages. And within that 35 pages was a really incredible understanding that we all came in, we originally came in with the intention to understand something more. So we came from being spiritual essence into physical form because we wanted to understand how thus and such felt. And so your purpose, of course, isn't a thing, it's the energy you create. And the thing is a byproduct of the energy created in the creation of the thing. And so what I know for sure is that we came in to discover something. And when we came from everything that was pure essence and flowing and not form into form, it was denser for sure. And it didn't quite feel that we might be able to accomplish the things that we had thought to want to accomplish. It was, and I hate to use the word harder, but it was just different. And
Mm-hmm.
so many came into is that a word? In to
They incarnated.
incarnate, to
Yeah.
incarnate, yes, to incarnate, and didn't accomplish what they had set about to discover and understand. And so within this new understanding, I was asking about the in between time between life and your passing, and then reincarnation,
Right.
and incarnating then yet again. And how did the purpose work as far as in that in between time? Because we then craft out another purpose when we choose to incarnate again. And many times it's almost a cycle where there may not be the feeling of choice, but more of the necessity to incarnate again.
Right.
And so what I got in a very more, I guess, concise way of saying this is that every time we incarnated, we had a further minimization of the original premise of our original purpose for coming into embodiment. So we had an aspect of an aspect of an aspect of an aspect that was no longer the totality of what we had once wanted to know. So what I was given in these updates were that we could choose in this lifetime to relinquish the aspect of the original purpose and learn again of the original mission, the original purpose, the totality of what we wanted to know before rather than a component of it. Does that make sense?
So you're saying basically over time, as we incarnated, it got more and more fragmented. Our original purpose is somehow fragmented through the experience of multiple incarnations, and we now have the opportunity to sort of reel it back in. Yeah. Is that correct? Is that what
and I'll add one that is correct. And what I'll add to that component is when you leave this life, there's always been the question of whether or not you know all as you leave this life. And what I've been specifically told is that when you leave your life, all your beliefs are the beliefs that you will hold as you move to this in-between state. And so everyone and everything that comes into your path is a reinforcement of all that you currently believe. Right. And so if you believe in Orthodox Christianity, then you will have all those friends that say welcome, and you may see all those things that will reinforce that. Yeah. If you have some quirky understanding, you will have those
the flying spaghetti monster.
Exactly. You will have that reinforcement. And so I asked about that, and I said, isn't that, and I didn't want to use the word deceitful, but I said, isn't that
confusing? Yeah.
Isn't that not right? I mean, why? And the answer was because you had free will and embodiment, and you had the opportunity to discover more. And if throughout the course you latched onto something and determined that you were comfortable there and did not want the more that always exists, then that was your free will. And so to take you then, when you move from this life, to tell you that what you embraced wasn't as you believed it to be, then it would be, in essence, a removal of the free will that exists for each one in the choices that they make, the elections that they made. And so it is the free will choice to know more or to be content with what you know now to be or what you believe it to be.
Which makes it makes sense because especially when you get to the root of, like you talked about just a moment ago, getting to what was your original purpose for incarnating. I always love anytime someone is talking about getting back to what's the root, what's the underlying, thread of why anything is happening. It's like that's where all the deepest insight in wisdom and answers are, I believe. And so what you're saying to me is like, at the end of the day, at the root of it all, you are the creator. And what that means is you get to create how things well are based off of your perceptions and beliefs.
Absolutely.
And so that is, which makes total sense that is the case. And what's interesting is I just saw yesterday a quote. Me and my dad have this kind of fun back and forth because he's very conservative Christian, and I like to sort of kid with him a lot about, his beliefs and sort of, it's just this ongoing thing that's happened for years and years because he's so steadfast in his belief about, this very conservative, rigid sort of, Christian perspective. I mean, even within, Christianity, his particular, denomination, I guess you would say, is very rigid and conservative.
Would you say like they're fundamental?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, it's Church of Christ is what it's called, and it's more prevalent in the South and the East Coast, kind of like Southern Baptist. What's so funny is, I just came across a verse. A Bible verse popped up that I sent him yesterday because, of course, I talk about us creating our reality and, all the stuff you and I are talking about on this podcast. And so it was Mark 11:24, and it said, "Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when you pray, believe that ye receive them and ye shall have them." It's like, it's the law of attraction. Awesome. It's like, that's what it was teaching. And,
exactly.
And then, I'd send him another, there's a few that had come up. There was another one that, in the last few days that I sent him, and it's like Isaiah 45:7. It's God talking, I believe in this particular scripture. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And that's Isaiah 45:7. And it's like, okay, so hold on, and it's like on a funny meme with like someone with like kind of a shocked face saying, when you find out Satan ain't the one creating evil, and it's like, so it just really is, it all
but
comes back to.
You have fun with those communications, right?
We do. Yeah.
And that makes it fun because I have that with a girlfriend of mine. Uh-huh. And it's fun because she'll send me a Bible quote and I'll go, oh, she sent me a Bible quote exactly on that perspective issue. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the point of the second book, the What If book of What Is. I mean, she'd almost, in this Bible verse, I'll have to go find it, but she almost had defined it in her Bible verse that she had shared. And right. So, yeah, that's exactly, and so much is related to your perspective and how you see things. Because isn't it amazing that we live in a world today where we have so many in population and everybody experiences a world that is unique to them.
Right.
They can live in a hypocritical world. They can live in a racist world. They can live in a non-racist world. They can live in a loving world. They can live in a, right. Whatever.
Yep.
And it's incredible, just incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the things that you said a moment ago that I'm curious about, well, a couple things. You mentioned whimsical perspective or something being whimsical, which I think is I'm curious what you meant by that, because I think I know what you're getting at, but.
Well, we were talking about the little book and to look at it in and from a whimsical perspective, because so often we're told we can't do something, or we're limited by something another might say, or by something our mind or ego produces. And right. So when you don't engage with that, when you can kind of almost pull yourself out, and as a child, it's harder to do that, or maybe it's easier, and I should never put a limitation on it, right? But to look at life from a whimsical posture and a fun posture, because life was meant to be fun. And so often right now, it's for some anything but that. And so when we can remove the mental posturing, right? When we can remove the ego and those components that would self-limit. So as a child, when I was a child, I wanted to be a stewardess and I wanted to be a nun. And he'd laugh and say, well, gosh, that seems really different. But in my discovery, I looked at what did they both do? They both serve. And so my underlying key mission item is service. Right. And so I've always had positions, regardless of what they were in title, but that were of service orientation.
Right.
And so it was always my intent to do something of service. And in the doings that I do, it was always elicited that the more, in my mind, the more that I did, the more I was serving those that employed me or those that connected with me.
Right.
And so, so service was always it for me. And, but my underlying initial, within this lifetime purpose was truth. And it was discovering truth. But truth is a component of my overarching purpose, which is service, and it's actually world service, and it's sharing these insights. And so truth, as you can see, is a component because you have to be truthful, right, in what you share and what you give. And so truth is an aspect of the bigger undertaking, but it's not anywhere in the totality of what it truly is. And so that's why what they've shared, and there's a meditational offering on my YouTube channel where they gave this teaching, and it's written out in more detail. And I gave it in this exercise, and then it's a kind of a self-meditational discovery type of tape recording. But it's 42 minutes, and it gives the insights, but then it also gives a heart center meditational offering where you can open and expand your heart center so that you can connect to discover what that is for yourself. And so, it's all about the discovery. It's all about knowing that you have within you all the tools that you need, but you can't maybe see them. And so that's why we've forgotten about them. But these are old teachings that are being given again in this time. And some may already know about it and perhaps not share it. My objective is to scream all of this at the top of the rooftops so that people know that they have more. And especially during this time where many people are at home still, and it's to get from beyond your homes, but to change in the process, and to enlist those measures and to enlist those things that help with a rediscovery and a self-discovery, so that as you go out, you're more empowered and you engage with the empowerment rather than with the fear aspect of many of the things that are being given today.
Right.
So that's the objective.
Yeah, well, you said some important things there. I mean, listeners know. I mean, they probably some can predict how I would respond, because talking about being whimsical is, okay, this would make it the most I've ever quoted the Bible in all 1,300 episodes. It's not normally what I do, but there's one quote that I do throw out all the time, and it's like, "Lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven." And I believe what that's saying is becoming whimsical and childlike and curious and resilient, and brushing things off really quickly when you stumble. And so and then Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And I always add to that why I believe that not only holds true for you, but pretty much all of us in some way, shape, or form, service, because there are no others. And this is how we actually give to ourselves, is by giving to the perceived quote unquote other, which is really us in disguise.
Exactly.
And so once you start understanding that, service is always going to tie into your highest purpose, I believe. And so
exactly, I'm with you 100%, because we're all connected. We're made from the same energetic spark, and so there is that connection that threads through all. And so yes.
Yes, cool. I like to say the consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form, and separation is the clever illusion that we constructed to have this experience of other. And but when that experience is played out, all the chess pieces go back in the same box. So
exactly, and too, some of it is a choice, right?
Yeah.
And so our life is the culmination of all the choices that have led us to where we sit right now. And so life, even the smallest, the one that seems so inconsequential, are building blocks. for the next thing that moves you into Q.
Yeah,
So
right.
I want to go back to, so the second book, so we covered kind of the first book and the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second book, which I don't want to minimize because it's I feel a very important book in that. So it's called the What If Book of What Is.
I like the name.
I know they gave me the name, and so
Sounds like Dr. Seuss or something.
And it is
or
because
Harry Potter.
It's all the posturing, right? So,
right.
So often we do everything with what if this happens? Or if I do that, what if this happens? What if that? And it's usually a negative posturing. Instead of looking at the expanse of what is, what's going on right now within your life, and what is the potentiality of all that could be, right?
Right.
And so the book is an incredible book. It talks about many things, but it talks about the beginnings of disease and illness, because how it ties into the purpose is that if you have a fractured body or a fractured soul and you are not able to live out this life and do all the things that you want to do, then you may not be able to accomplish your purpose. So the objective is to always have a fully functioning vessel, a fully functioning body, and to know that so often emotions that are not felt, that are stored and tucked away, and these are the emotions that people choose not to feel, those that don't feel as good as the happy things. These are the beginnings of disease and illness.
Right.
And they actually change the composition of the atom and its relation to everything else around it. And it becomes disorganized and incongruent. And over time, this misaligned energy changes throughout the body form and draws more to follow its less than symmetrical rotation. And so so energy in its purest form that you store, because we're a vessel, we have a repository for many things that we don't see. It's the means of creation of disease. And so there's a chapter of a little book club that I'm doing right now where they're working on the What If Book of What Is. And they meet weekly, and I join in towards the end of it to answer questions. And we just finished covering subtle energy. And subtle energy is one of the most significant chapters, because it's where you can engage with the process to remove this trapped stored energy and release this. But most recently, the elders have given and it was within the 35 pages that I had been given some time ago, but had not been ready to receive. But they gave within that a grounding exercise. And within this grounding exercise, and it's on the YouTube channel too, but within this grounding exercise, you're able to release those energies that you've newly stored. So the book allows you to unlayer what has been buried and built upon. And so you can diffuse what's been stored for a time and a longer time. But this little grounding exercise, which is about 3 minutes, you do it in the morning. It not only will help you ground to your day, but it also has some very short language that will allow you to release the energy that you have newly stored from something that you didn't even know that you were storing. If you heard something that kind of made you disturbed, and you're listening to maybe talk radio, and it got your dander up, and you just moved on and changed the channel or whatever, but you had that initial feeling, maybe you didn't really process it. Or maybe someone said something and in passing, and you kind of thought, well, that's odd, that's kind of, but you didn't say anything, and you didn't really allow yourself to process it. So this allows those little things that over time, when they're stored, they draw more of their energetic kind to them. And the other thing that I think is important about this is, so often people will say, well, I keep attracting these same types of people, and I don't understand, and they're they're not vibrant and in a healthy place like I am. And I don't understand why I'm attracting this type of individual.
Right.
And that is because you have an energy within you that is the attractor to them. And in that attraction, they are coming to you so that you're aware that you have this energy within. So again, these people that maybe create a little bit of angst in your life are a gift,
Right.
because they're there to show you something that you couldn't see any other way. For if you had, you'd already have done something about it.
Right.
So they enter in. And so when you can look at life and look at so many things that enter your life from that whimsical posture, that wonderment, and then become like the detective to sleuth out the answers. Because why did this person enter my life? Why is this situation happening? What am I supposed to see? And sometimes it's hard to be in that whimsical space when you're in the midst of a drama. So what you might want to do is pull yourself out and look upon it like you're watching a play, and you're the main character in the play, but you look at it with no drama, no
Right.
feeling, no engagement. You're not in the drama now, you're of the drama. And
Mm.
so that's when it's a beautiful thing. So the What If book is, it gives the beginnings of Earth. It gives a description of the it gives so many things in the foundational platform of how things were structured. It gives so many fundamental, foundational, pivotal insights, so that it gives a basis of understanding, so that everything that moves forward, because I know I've been gifted with a third book, and I've started it several times, and then I stop. And each time I re-engage, I'm told that whatever had written before is no more. And then I have to start again,
Wow.
because I've stopped for enough time
Uh-huh.
that the book that was there before, I've evolved from it, and I'm no
Right.
longer in that space to receive it in the same way. And so I've the third round just happened. I started it back in February, March. I went back to Asheville, and there's a place there that I love. And I went there, and I did some writing.
Hmm.
And then I got back to the reality of my home, and doing some things here to make it. I just moved here and trying to make it to where I was comfortable here.
Yeah.
And I got back into all of that, and that kind of went a little bit into the back burner. And so I know soon it's going to formulate again. But I started getting all these insights and doing all these and making all these YouTube posts and blog posts and all these different things. And so anyway, that kind of took the priority for a little bit of time. So anyway, it's a fun time. But the What If book is an incredible book, because it's a book to self-heal. It's a book to take you on a journey of discovery, and to rediscover those things that quite honestly have been given before, but are being given again in this
Right.
time.
What is one of the favorite perspectives or shares, or maybe not favorite, but something that pops to your mind
From the
from the
blog
book?
post
Yeah. Yeah,
or
or
the
from the
book?
book. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be helpful. I know you said there's some. You mentioned the grounding exercises. I'm not sure if I think you said that's written in the book. But
No, that's in the YouTube. That's in the
oh, gotcha.
YouTube.
Okay, gotcha. So, what is something from the book that would be fun to share? Obviously they can go and read the whole thing, but
I think the foundational platform of how the earth came to be. And
can you share some of that?
um you'd have to pause, and I could look it up in the book and find it.
Oh,
Because
and actually read
it's
it. You mean?
yeah, because it's too beautiful. I'd butcher it. I mean, it's what everybody knows to be the case, um, more or less, but it's the way it's given, and the loving energy. The biggest thing I get from the elders is the loving energy that kind of exudes everything I read when I connect, and everything I feel when I connect to them. And
Hmm.
so it's the words, and the words that they've chosen.
Yeah.
And it's just it's more beautiful to just read it as opposed to for me to
Gotcha.
just kind of um,
How long was
get.
that segment? Would
It's
you think
not
to read?
that long. It would take maybe about 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to read a little bit from it, I mean, that'd be kind of a fun thing I haven't done too often.
This is entitled Creation, the Beginnings, and it's in chapter 13, I believe, titled Connection. When the world was initially established, the intent was very simple. Universal Source allowed components of itself to fragment and form. In the initial creation, aspects of the whole were multiplied in numbers. As they divided, they became even smaller components of the main essence or source. So each, although separate, still maintained the quality of the larger whole. So in going out into manifestation, each held the matrix of itself. Each was just a portion of the whole, as an awareness of its original source was maintained. As time progressed, essence wanted to experience more. In this state of wholeness, there was no diversity, there was only oneness. And then they bolded this and said, so creator becomes the creation and does that which it does best. It creates. As such, the creation is also a creator, as each did become a co-creator in form. They continue. So as planets and systems of worlds were created, each experienced creative forces in a manner that was different in vibrational frequency from the other. Thus, some were created in a more frequency-based modality, while others appeared to be a denser frequency in form. Earth is a three-dimensional field, and as such is denser than many other modalities. Not to say it is the most or least dense, it is what it is. So operating in this field of conflict-free, limitless potential, interest spawned, and was intensified to discover diversity and differences where so little conflict existed. Push-pull was a concept, but not unlike many premises, existed in theory rather than in practice. And so there was interest in these things that did not presently exist where nothing but beauty and light existed. In this realm, to think of it was as it was to be, and so it was. So to say that there was interest in drama, really, there was curiosity of how it was and how it felt to be. Such details did play into the dynamics here. So emotions and feelings were also curiosities. What was this? And how would it feel to have thus and such happen? You see, too, there are parallel universes and dynamics that are in existence simultaneously, known only to exist in theory as they have not yet been confirmed in this time-space continuum. When so much is at play and time in the etheric dimension is not as time is on the physical plane, well then the differences were curiosities. Experiences were sought to be felt and realized. But when man came here and initially kept the awareness of who he was and who he was a part of, well, there was not the opportunity to be fully engaged with the experience. At that time, discoveries such as love, happiness, joy were desired to be experienced and felt. But to truly understand love, well, what is love without its opposite? What is being right if there is not its opposite? Even though we say that there is no right or wrong here, there is a different dynamic in play in the physical dimension. If there is joy and happiness, what is that except in the realization of it? When you realize the value or measure of each by not having it by its removal or loss, then having a measure of that again does bring a greater appreciation of it. Then having this or that from the premise or understanding makes each experience and the feelings associated with them so much more. So you see, all were necessary in order to achieve a fuller understanding and to allow a deeper experience to be felt. Without one or the other, the full measure would not be completely understood. During this time, all awareness was in a whole state. Yet from this state of wholeness, experiences could not be fully realized or felt. And so awareness sought separation from the knowledge which existed for those who embodied. Although they entered with their full, expansive connection to Source, this recollection faded. For when the knowledge had remained throughout the lifetime, there was not the full measure of understanding or feeling of what the experience might impose and impart. And so, although never disconnected, the awareness of the connection slipped away. Thus, the individual was able to experience what life was like and how it felt to do this or that. In time, religions were established to show right from wrong from a certain perspective. The difficulty here was that sometimes those who were not so highly attuned sought control and power within the hierarchy there. They sought power for their own purposes rather than to have the same intentions focused from a more enlightened perspective. And why do rules need to exist anyway? Surely universe will return to the individual what each one does do to the other. He will draw more of it back to himself as universal law dictates through his own line of thinking. Do rules ever truly govern, or do they create an incentive to figure out how to get around the imaginary boundaries they create? Many see rules as a game where they try to circumvent the newly imposed limitation. And so how did other thought forms come into reality here? Initially, essence came to experience only those things that were of a similar vibratory nature. Thus, only like-kind vibrations could emanate here. So why were different vibrations created? They were needed to show an opposing component within the mix to more clearly understand the depths and degree of happiness sought. And so the counterpoint was brought forward for a means of distinction. Without an opposing consideration, who is to say what it means to be truly happy, joyful, and such? For that, you would need a countermeasure to experience the full extent of the emotional energy sought. If you only knew happiness, what comparable experience could you draw from if that were all you knew? And in such limited experiences, you would not have the ability to understand or realize the fuller measure each emotion offers. Sometimes two measures are introduced, so a more global effect is experienced. There is a shift in consciousness when this occurs, and right now there is such a shift occurring. Just a short time ago, this sort of teaching would have been much more difficult to openly share, except in secret societies.
Cool.
So
great share.
The beginnings.
Love it.
Isn't that lovely?
Makes total sense. It is. You know, one of the things I want to talk about is this idea, and we spoke a little bit about it before we started recording, and this whole idea of soul fragmentation. And the point you mentioned is to ultimately become whole. And I have a really fascinating firsthand account or story pertaining to someone crucial to my, my life, and soul fragmentation, and then a journey of apparently becoming more whole. And I'd love to share it here in a moment, but before we do, I'd love to hear. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'd love to hear yours first.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's okay. Fine. So my child's mother, anyone who's been listening for a long time, knows that she, had sort of I guess you would say a very substantial mental break, maybe, I don't know, a little over a decade ago. And, she was always a little bit crazy. You would maybe, not in a way that's like, oh, this is a person who has significant mental health issues. And a little over a decade ago, she had a very severe mental break where it was just like, no connection to this reality, and just, seeing things from, very dark too, and very aggressive, and very, just kind of a scary thing. And for my son, who's a very charmed individual, such a kind, beautiful, clear soul, I always kind of viewed it as like, wow, this is, I guess, his big cross to bear, because my mother is, very lucid and sort of like a super mom kind of energy. So I couldn't imagine seeing my mother go from being, she's a little challenging at times, to, oh, wow, she's not even at all here or grounded in this reality. And it's aggressive, it's dark, it's scary. It's and so basically she was not, you couldn't be around her, and so she was not in his life, and she sort of bounced around, with, being homeless at times, experiencing homelessness, being, having just very, bad situations that she was in, but you couldn't deal with her. It was like dealing with like a wild animal or something, quite honestly. And a few months ago, so let's see, where did I go from here? So, a few months ago, she was arrested, and they forced a drug on her, a shot that was for a very powerful, I guess, antipsychotic, and it snapped her out of it. And this is someone who you'd never, she was so far gone, like you'd never guess that she could come back. And I sort of had an intuition about it. And most people were like, she's, it'd almost be better had he lost his mother in, an accident or passed away than to see her become, kind of lose her mind completely. Yeah, right. And so she was really not the last 10 years in his life very much at all. And all of a sudden we'd hear from her from time to time with like crazy texts or whatever, but she reached out, and it was like lucid, and wow. I was given this drug, and and it's helped me tremendously. I'm back. I can see now that I was completely. She claims it was a very spiritual kind of multidimensional, like she was experiencing. She would talk about being the goddess of all things, and, you're all sort of my minions, and all, things like that. And this is my realm, and she was saying she was just very confused, seeing, not fully grounded here at all, and experiencing, this very dark perspective. And anyway, so then a friend of mine who's a sort of one of the, healers that's sort of regular part here of the Mystic Manor tribe, and she is a very multidimensional Akashic record reader, and experience her whole life all day every day is talking to guides, seeing beings, both physically in front of her, or with her third eye, and all day every day, just communicating with the other side, right? Yeah. And she said she was shown soon, right after this happened, that she needed to do a soul retrieval with my child's mom, and that she was shown that her soul was actually the most fragmented thing she'd ever seen. Over lifetimes where she had experienced traumas in other lives, she had left parts of herself there, essentially. So part of her in this life and what she was experiencing was this, like, she's like shards
like
of herself.
But it was like a culmination of all
So my friend Leah was like, I was shown very matter-of-factly by my guides that I needed to do this sort of ceremony, this thing with my son Bradley, and they spent hours where they were like doing this whole thing she was guided to do to help her retrieve these fragmented parts of herself that were scattered across, dimensions and space-time. Yeah, and she did it, and they did this thing, and she only continued to. Then Leah said the next morning, my son's mother's name is Denise. She said she showed up to her when she was cooking breakfast as a Lyran, her higher self, as this kind of like cat-like warrior being, thanking her for the work that it was part of a soul contract that they had lived together in the past. And my son's mother had actually sacrificed herself in battle for Leah at one point. And this was part of their, And so fast forward to, that was a few months ago. She came back maybe 4 or 5 months ago, where you could actually talk to her in a lucid, loving, pleasant way via text mostly. I talked on the phone with her one time, or FaceTime, and it was her birthday on Saturday. Turns out she has the same birthday as Everett, who is the creative director of my show Optimistic, and her, Everett, and my brother all have the same Destiny card, which I'm a fan of Destiny cards. So anyway, yeah. So it was Everett's birthday, her birthday over this last weekend, and my son Bradley wanted to see her and asked if I would come. So we went and had lunch at a park with her, met her up with her, and I've never in the 20 plus years I've known her, seen her so lucid, pleasant, easy, kind. It was like not only are you back, you're way better than the version, or better, an improvement, eating pleasant, easy, loving,
Well, she's herself.
compared to prior to, even,
Wow, what a
way
gift.
back in the day. Yeah. So you brought up this morning that you had kind of been given some insight into soul fragmentation and the point to become whole. And I, of course, prior to us even turning on the recording, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have such a great story that just unfolded as of a few days ago. I mean, seeing her, 3 days ago, I'm like, we walked away and my son is just beaming like, oh my gosh, my mother is so pleasant. And it's kind of like this crazy gift to get her back in his life. And
Isn't that cool?
it
Wow, what a
really
gift.
was. Yeah. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
curious. I'm curious. Maybe you want to share a little bit about what you were talking about earlier in regards to fragmentation and the journey to becoming whole. And I think it ties into what you were just sharing from the book as well.
Well, and yes, so we're familiar with the soul fragmentation aspect um, in many ways, and what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
so what the What If book discusses was the first chapter is my original incarnation, where they bring up soul fragmentation, but they don't discuss it other than to allude to it. But they said what
Mm.
had happened within that first life for me, for my personality, the other aspect of me, I guess, was the creation of an energetic matrix, which
Mm.
occurred from a disruption not intended. It's the whole chapter, and it would be another almost reading the whole chapter, but I'll suffice it to say that energetic matrices are created, and I experienced before they gave it was the last chapter of the book, and we shifted it to the first chapter of the book. But I had gone on a trip to Vancouver with a girlfriend, and we invited another girlfriend to come and join us while we were up there. And one of them did a past life regression. And I was actually directed to the most significant life that I'd ever had
Oh
that
wow.
would facilitate what I'm doing now. And it took me to
Cool.
that first life. And so in that I could see her, and I felt her grief because she had had an occurrence that made her not trust anyone. And there's so many different things that I've even discovered beyond the giving of that book and the giving of that chapter. But what I recognized was at one point I wanted to embrace her because she was so sad. And I
Mm.
just wanted to energetically give her love and hug her and let her know everything was going to be okay, because she was 19 when she died.
Oh
And so she
wow.
was just a child. And, but she was doing this same work that I'm doing now. She was connecting physical with the non-physical, physical
Mm.
energy with non-physical energy, consciousness with consciousness. And she was a bridge.
Mm.
And she was a bridge with the elders. And
Mm.
so the elders have been with me for many lifetimes, but I never have had the recognition of them until this embodiment. Since that embodiment, they said I've had glimpses, but I've never really fully connected to them like I did then. So
Mm-hmm.
this individual held a great deal, even though she was young, she held a great deal of light, uh, and I would say energy as opposed to light, but light energy.
Yeah.
And I remember embracing her, and it was like this explosion is the only way I can describe it. It was the most intense energy I'd ever felt. It was like I was in the middle of a fireworks exhibit. It was
Wow.
incredible. And it just exploded. And it was incredible. I just and I so I was given the opportunity to have the experience, to have the remembrance of what had happened. And then I returned home to Colorado, and I was given the rest of the chapter, because I'd started the chapter, but knew I had gotten to a block and that there wasn't anything more to give. And it wasn't until I went through this experience that it came forward with the ending, the rest of the chapter. That was the description of that lifetime from the perspective of the elders, as opposed to from my perspective. But I
Wow.
had my perspective first, which was really cool. And then to read how it was from their understanding. And then more recently, I've had other revelations. I had some things within the book that I had thought were a certain way, and I had to go back and reread the book. I ended up editing the book because I was, and I don't like using the word fearful, but I was concerned that if I let someone else alter the book, that the dual meanings that exist within the book would be lost, that they would make changes or edits and they would be gone. And I felt like there was a need for someone who was connected to the words to be the one to edit it. And I've never edited a book before, but it took me 2-3 years after they were written to get to the point where I was comfortable with releasing it, because I'm not an editor. I love to write, but I'm not an editor. And so anyway, so I got these realizations. And then as I awoke yesterday and then again today, I got more realizations on the aspect of the soul becoming whole. So often we think of when we accomplish our purpose and our mission, that then perhaps we won't have to come back into the rounds of reincarnation, because then we've accomplished what the soul set out to know. And so there's not a need to come back unless the soul figures out something else that it didn't understand. But I would suspect that by the time we get to leave this pathway or this portal or this experience or these many experiences, that we'll be good, that we'll have understood enough of the countermeasures. We don't need to maybe do it anymore. But anyway, part of it is to discover your purpose, but also to have your soul become whole. And so the fractured and the fractalizing of the soul is part of it. But the other part that I was getting this morning was that as you are in different embodiments, you energetically have created different gifts. Because again, as we've said, that your purpose isn't a thing, it's an energy that you wanted to feel, because you're meant to feel your way through life. And so as you feel different things and as you have the euphoria, like when I was getting ready to be on your podcast today, I was in a space of, I am so excited to be a part of this podcast. And I just really felt that energy, and I want to bottle it, right? I want to be able to mark the time when I'm in that space so I can reclaim it. If I ever want to create something, I want to get into that energy, because that's a creation energy, right? It's the expectation, it's the awe energy. And so part of it is that when you're in this form, you've created things before energetically that are always yours. You take them with you. And they say throughout the What If book, it's all about you. Well, it's all about you, and it's all about you. It's all about you, but it's also all about you. So there are so many things that are just right here that once you know it's there, you integrate it. You disintegrate it and integrate it into your form, so that you have this thing with you. And now you can access those things that you've energetically created before in this time and space, because they're yours. Why couldn't you claim what it is that you can claim? And that's discussed in the book too. I don't know exactly where, but this was a deeper understanding that I got this morning, and and they were giving it to me, and I think I now do it by computer because I can type a lot faster and I can write. And I think I got like 3 or 5 pages of the insight. And what's so cool is over time, that will become something I put up on YouTube, so that someone can go through that process themselves, because nothing is meant to be exclusive to me. But in order
Yep.
for me to share it, I've got to understand it, integrate it, be able to be it.
Yep.
And so that's the phase that I'm in. And so it's just awesomely cool. Everything is just awesomely cool.
Yes, it is. As we become more whole and reclaim these fragmented parts of ourselves. And also, I love the idea of sort of a guided meditation where it's like, okay, I want to call back the fragmented parts of myself that I've left scattered, and I want to also call back all the gifts and talents that are mine to claim. I think of a friend who, I've told this story before, a friend of mine who has very powerful experiences where every night she sleeps, she'll step into other lifetimes where she'll, sometimes be there for decades and then wake up and it's just a morning, one night has passed here. And so she has it's intense for her though. Sometimes it's like a lot and she's just like, I just want to stay in one place. It's like, but she had an experience of sitting at a piano recently and all of a sudden she tapped into a lifetime in like the 1800s, it felt like, where it was her playing the piano and she was crying because her partner or lover or husband had left and she was really sad. And she said she was able in this lifetime to tap into it fully, kind of like a bilocation thing, and was able to play the same thing on the piano that herself was playing in that timeline, even though she's not a piano player. Yeah. So that's a great example of, the type of thing almost
a parallel universe.
Yeah. I have multiple friends that are having those sorts of experiences and very, very intense. Cool. Yeah. And, one of the things as we sort of kind of wind down here, one of the things that you also said this morning that I really liked, we talked about someone giving predictions about, of course, a lot of people in this circle, especially, or listening to the show, know someone who is intuitive. We're all intuitive, right? And a lot of those gifts are coming online for people, and then that can parlay into getting a intuitive or psychic reading. And one of the things that you and I talked about that I really felt inspired to share was this idea of someone, who supposedly has some, is tapping into their intuition, let's say, and reading you and gives you some sort of a prediction about something that doesn't feel good or that doesn't resonate. The way I view it is maybe it's just happening as an opportunity for me not to buy into that thing. Awesome. Not so much that it's actually this is what's going to happen. This thing that you don't want or don't like to hear necessarily is definitely happening. First off, if anyone ever tells you definitely this is going to happen, I would say run, because I believe there's, multiple timelines and we have the free will to choose at any point, which can then shift which timeline we step into. So no one could predict with certainty. And I think if they could, we'd see reflections of that on the planet in some way. Someone who all they do is, hit the lottery every day, right? So, so it's, one of those things. If someone is, and I can't quite recall how it came up, but if someone is predicting anything that doesn't resonate, I loved what you said, and I wanted to make sure we shared it. Is like, look, you don't need to take it on or buy into it, and maybe even like I've sort of told the story about it, is maybe it's just happening as an opportunity of something for you to, to release and to have the opportunity not to buy what someone is sort of selling, if you will, or, maybe that's not exactly, they're not selling it necessarily, but sort of looking to energetically pass along to you. And that's how so many things happen, by the way, in our life, right? As children, we're told you can't sing, you do this, you are that, you're smart, you're not, whatever. And if you buy it, if you accept, you allow them to tell you, then now it is so. And I think that's really important where this intuitive stuff applies as well.
And I want to piggyback on that because I'd add this. So I had a incredible intuitive when I was in Boulder, and she was in Boulder. I was in Boulder. I was really outside of Boulder, anyway. But she, I noticed that she was only telling me positive things or telling me things in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I said, I like that. You're not telling me any negative things. And she said, well, I have a choice as to how I share. Because what ends up happening is your mind, even though you choose not to connect with it, in the back of your mind, you remember what's been said, and your mind is constantly looking for affirmation of what was said. Looking to see, well, is that what they were talking about, or is it that, or is it that? And so the mind is, and one thing that we didn't talk about is the mind and ego, though I brought them up a little bit. They're tools. And the awareness that you are is meant to control the tools that you've been given. But we've lost control of the tools. We let the tools, it's like the computer running the operation, right? Instead of using it as just one tool that you have. So no, with that aspect, the first thing I do is, whatever intuitives you use, say, I only want you to frame it in the most positive way. That'd be my ground rule to receive any kind of intuitive insights. Because what the What If book talks about is that your intuition is like a muscle, and you can engage, and I think they've given some steps in the book that can help to engage that muscle, because you want to work the muscle, you want to develop it, right? You want to be able to do these things for yourself. Then you don't have to trust. It's like having someone else interpret your dream. You're the only one who can interpret your dream, because you're the only one who knows intrinsically what these things mean. It doesn't matter what they think they mean. That's maybe what they mean to them. But what they mean to you is giving someone else the keys to unlock something that, quite frankly, they can't do. And so anyway, so with, what this friend told you, they've got now the mind engaged with a certain thing. And there's a couple of steps, there's a couple of things that you can do that are also, I love the little What If book because it's got a storehouse of information, but it talks about, there's one exercise, and I'll share, but there's a number of them, where you can place whatever scene. So you take your scene of this person giving you that update, and you place it on a conveyor belt. And now you're watching that scene go faster and faster and faster and faster until all of a sudden it's all jumbled. And you just let it go. And I had something, and it works the best for stories maybe that you haven't shared, because the mind's had a chance to latch onto it at this point. But I did it one time with something that really was giving me a lot of angst, and it had just happened, and I was getting ready to tell it to someone. I thought, I'm going to try this little exercise because it had just been given to me. And I put it on the conveyor belt, and I ripped it around, and I followed the steps, and I went to share the story, and I couldn't remember the story, and I still can't remember the story. And so what I know for sure is, if you disorient, and what they call it is outwitting the wit. So when you outwit the wit, then you're accelerating your game, right?
Right.
And so you want to be the gamesman, the key player, and you want to keep this other thing in check. And so it's all the little steps of how you disorient, and they give like 4 or 5 different ways you can do it, but it's not meant to be the only ways. It's meant to get you to the place and posture where you go, well, this would work for me. I think I could do this. And then you create your own methodology. It's just giving you kind of fertile ground to kind of play in the energy and to see what it is that resonates for you, that works specifically for you, because you're the one who has the keys to your destiny. You're the one who has the insights to make things right. Because at the end of the day, as they say, all is up to you. My first website, all is up to you. It's all your choices. It's all how it resonates, how you interpret it. And when you need a different interpretation, a different perspective, that's when you can shift everything, because then you've been open to explore different possibilities, different uniquenesses, different things in life. And then you know that you're enlisting more. And one last thing I want to share that I think is really important is, in between states, when you make your transition at any point, never allow anything to happen without you asking questions and asking for more. Because when you believe that you know all and people are giving you guidance at that point and you're shifting into maybe another incarnation, they've told me always, always, always ask for more. Ask more questions, ask for more guidance. Because so often we feel like we know everything and everything is being done, then you're back into embodiment really quickly. And not to say that that's not the right choice, but in everything that you do as you go to bed at night, ask for more, insights, and have your journal and have your laptop there so you can write down, because the words sometimes are fleeting. You'll be in that in-between state, but that's when you'll get the greatest insights. Or when you engage in contemplation meditation, those are times where you always want to allow in answers to questions that you pose. It's the checklist, and it's the monotony of the mind and saying you don't have time to do these things. Those are the things that you shelf. Those are the things that you put to the side. But you always pose and enter into meditation with questions and ponderings, because how else do you get your insights, right?
Awesome. I love that. So, so good. Always ask for more. There's more to be had. And speaking of asking for more, I think the last ask maybe the second to last ask I have for this podcast, I love to hear stories, and the listeners love to hear stories of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story. Do you have something up your sleeve to share?
Well, I could share. I feel like these days, everything is serendipitous. For example, I have people that have come to work on the house, and each one of them over time have had a story that they've needed to share. And it's been fun to be in that space. And so I kind of wait to see who lines up to come and work here. But I happened here because I happened to I wanted to get another computer, and I was in North Carolina, and
That's
where I was.
all my roots are from.
Oh,
I've
really
always
cool.
I always had a feeling, by the way, that I would write an intuition that I would work on writing a book in Asheville.
That's where I was.
Close family friends have property in Asheville, and I don't know. I've always just had a feeling that someday I would go there and spend time in the mountains and write. So we'll see if that comes to pass.
And that's where I went back when I went to write this last time, was Asheville. And
cool.
but they don't have an Apple store. And so I was going to South Carolina and I'd gone to this mall, and I was like not real fired up about the mall. And so I noticed that Avalon in Alpharetta, Georgia I'd gone to France a few years ago. I thought I was going to move there, and that's another whole serendipitous. That is a serendipitous story. But anyway, when I was in, where was I? When I was in Aix-en-Provence, there was an Apple store that looks identical, except it's much bigger than the one that's in the Avalon Center in Alpharetta. And I saw this Apple store, and I went, oh my God, that's a sign. So instead of making the appointment, it was a little bit further away, but I made the appointment at the store. So I went there and I started driving around, because I knew I wasn't to stay in Asheville. I want to teach. I want to teach all of this, and I want to lecture, and I want to do so many things that I haven't even announced that I'm going to be doing. And so anyway, I knew I needed to be near a larger airport. And Asheville, although it's got an airport, it's a regional airport, and it's not like being near Atlanta. And so anyway, when I came to that Apple store, I started kind of driving around. I went, wow, I could live in Georgia. I like this area. This is really, and that was how the seeds first got planted, that I was to be here. And then everything following it is there's so many. I mean, I sat and I thought it before I was getting on, and I thought, I have so many stories I wouldn't even know where to begin. So I'll see which one pops into my mind when you ask the question. So anyway.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
one of
kind of
those
how I've
things.
gotten
It's
here.
tricky. It's tricky even if someone were to ask me the question. It's like, oh, all of a sudden it's like I don't even know where to go. But yet if something just comes up organically, it's like there's just so many.
Yeah. And it's beautiful when you get to that space, right?
Yeah, it really is. I never stop with the childlike wonder and excitement around it, and which is, I think, what feeds more of it manifesting.
I agree. It's beautiful.
Well, this has been beautiful, Robyn. You're such a light and so inspiring. What is the best way for people who want to connect and follow your work to do so? You mentioned your
Yeah,
websites. I'm assuming there.
yes, it's advanced with a D, energetics with an S, .org, O-R-G,
Got it.
is the website. And you can link to the YouTube channel on the top of the page. And there's an about page, about us, link on the bottom that tells more about the elders. And there's a blog post. And we just started doing, scheduling some lectures and some interactive workshops. And then we had this unique planetary occurrence happen. And so now I'm starting to do some things, and I'm actually going to have a more or less interactive Zoom um, meeting on Saturday. So I can give you
Oh,
that
cool.
maybe when we get off, and if you want to put that up, we can put that up too.
Excellent, excellent. Well, with that being said, I do have one final question for you, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Robyn Locke?
Gosh, the meaning of life is taking each and every opportunity that you have while your feet are firmly planted on this earth to discover more, to ask questions, and to always know that God and Source, Universe love you, and that you're a part of each and everything, and that all of this was created with the idea that you could discover more and be more.
Beautiful, beautiful, very beautifully said. I have so enjoyed connecting with you, Robyn. Thank you for taking the time to co-create with me, and all of you out there listening. Thank you for tuning in, tuning your beautiful brainwaves in. As always, until next time, journey well. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.